I told myself I'd never let another man into this house again. And then I opened the door. He was standing there holding nothing but his hands in his pockets, and a look I remembered all too well. He said he'd come for a book, something he left behind years ago, back when this place was still full of voices, before silence took over every room. I should have said no. I should have smiled politely, told him I'd look for it later. But instead I stepped back. Just a few inches. Enough for him to walk in. The air shifted the second he crossed the threshold. The kind of shift you feel more in your skin than your chest. It smelled like old paper, and unsaid things. The sun was cutting through the blinds just right, catching the dust in the air like it had something to show us. He looked around like nothing had changed, but everything had. I watched him walk toward the shelves like he still knew them by heart. He didn't ask about my husband, and I didn't bring it up. That silence, it said more than 1,000 condolences ever could. He turned to me and smiled, not the wide kind, just enough to remind me why I used to avoid his eyes at dinner. Why I never sat next to him when my husband poured the wine. He was trouble, but he read poetry like it could save your life. And maybe that's why I didn't stop him when he sat down. A little too close. Close enough that his shoulder warmed the air between us. He said, "It'll only take a minute." But we both knew he wasn't just here for the book. And neither was I. But I didn't know yet how far that minute would stretch. Not until his hand brushed mine, and neither of us moved. It should have been nothing. Just skin brushing skin, a flicker, a mistake. But when his fingers touched mine, time didn't move the way it was supposed to. He didn't flinch. Neither did I. There was a silence, not awkward, not polite. Heavy, like the space between a question and its answer. I looked at his hand, stronger than I remembered. Or maybe I just never let myself look this closely before. His thumb rested against the edge of the page, but I don't think either of us were reading. My pulse was suddenly loud, not in my chest but in my throat, like I'd swallowed something hot and couldn't speak. He turned to me slowly like he didn't want to scare the moment away, and then he said something ridiculous. "You always smelled like cedar." I didn't even ask what that meant, because I did know what he meant. The bookshelf behind me was full of my husband's favorite novels. The ones he used to read aloud like he was trying to impress someone. But this man beside me, he never needed to try. He just was. Present. Calm. Dangerous in that quiet, slow-burning way. He reached up, pulled a worn copy of The Bell Jar from the shelf. Held it between us. "I think this is the one," he said, barely above a whisper. It wasn't. We both knew that. But I nodded anyway. And when I reached to take it, his hand stayed right where it was. Waiting. Not pressing. Not forcing. Just waiting. I should have pulled back. But instead my fingertips landed on his like a promise I hadn't meant to make. That's when I noticed he wasn't looking at the book anymore. He was looking at me. And I realized I wasn't looking at the book either. Not for a very, very long time. The book slipped from our hands. Landed on the carpet with a soft thud. Spine up, pages open like it had something to say. But I couldn't read a single word. Because he was still looking at me like I was the story. Like I was the thing he'd come back for. I should have said something. Made a joke. Broken the tension. But my mouth was too aware of itself. He shifted, not toward me, not away. Just enough to feel the heat of his arm. The outline of his thigh against mine. And suddenly the room felt smaller. The kind of small that makes you aware of every breath. Every inch of fabric on your skin. Every single place where you're not being touched. His voice came softer this time. "You've changed." I didn't ask how. I didn't want to hear it. Because I could feel what he meant. I was quieter. Stiller. Like a house with too many locked rooms. He looked down, not ashamed, not nervous. Just careful. And when he spoke again, it wasn't about me. "She never let me close," he said. I didn't need a name. I remembered the girlfriend. The one who left him midwinter, no explanation, just a letter on the kitchen table. My husband had told me all about it. But hearing it from him, in this silence, it felt different. More personal. More naked. I reached down for the book, but my hand hesitated. His was already there. This time he didn't move it away. His palm grazed mine, slow, deliberate, like he was reading me now instead. And it wasn't even about the touch. It was the way he looked at me while it happened. Like he was listening for something beneath my skin. Like he could hear what I wasn't saying. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to speak or be read completely. There's a moment right before something happens where everything slows. Not because you're afraid, but because you want it. And wanting always takes your breath before it gives it back. That's where I was. His hand was still on mine. Not heavy. Not demanding. Just there like it had every right to be. And I didn't move away. And he noticed. I felt it in the way his fingers curled slightly. Not closing, just brushing a little deeper into my palm. I looked up. He didn't smile. He didn't have to. His eyes said everything. Like he knew exactly how far we'd come from the front door. Like this wasn't a surprise, just overdue. The sun had shifted again, casting long amber streaks across the floor. It hit his jawline in a way that made me forget what year it was. I could feel the air getting thicker between us. Not hot, just charged. He spoke again. Quietly. Do you ever think about different versions of your life? I exhaled before I realized I'd been holding it. Every day. He nodded once slowly. Like he'd been waiting for me to say that. Like it confirmed something he'd always suspected. The silence that followed didn't ask for anything. It just held us. Held everything unsaid. My shoulder brushed his. And this time I leaned in a little too far. Not much. Just enough that if I had pulled away right then, we could have pretended it was nothing. But I didn't. He tilted his head, the smallest gesture. And suddenly I could feel his breath against my temple. Measured. Warm. Hesitant. I didn't dare turn. Because I knew if our eyes met right then, I wouldn't be able to pretend this was still about a book. I should have stood up. Laughed it off. Said I had somewhere to be. But the truth is, I didn't want to leave that moment. Not yet. Not when the air between us felt like it had finally remembered how to breathe. He moved first. Not fast, slow enough that I could have stopped him a dozen times. But I didn't. His hand lifted to my cheek, hovered there like a question he wasn't sure he should ask. And then barely he touched me. Just his fingertips. Just enough. I closed my eyes, because sometimes seeing makes it too real. But feeling is where it starts. My body didn't flinch. It softened. Like I'd been holding tension in every part of me for years and suddenly forgot why. He didn't kiss me. Not then. Not yet. He just leaned in until our foreheads touched. And I swear, I heard something inside me unlatch. Like a door I'd sealed shut had finally cracked open. Not all the way, but just enough to let the light back in. His thumb moved along my jaw, tracing something he hadn't earned the right to remember, and yet somehow did. He whispered, "You're not who I thought you were." And I whispered back, "Neither are you." It wasn't the book that fell open this time. It was me. Something inside me had loosened. Something I wasn't ready for, but wasn't afraid of either. And when his lips finally found mine, it didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like a secret I'd already kept too long. His lips touched mine like he wasn't sure I'd still be there the next second. Soft. Slow. Almost apologetic. But I didn't pull away. I tilted into him just slightly, and that was all it took. Something shifted. The kind of shift you don't plan. The kind that doesn't ask permission. His hand found the back of my neck, and suddenly my skin remembered what it was like to be wanted without explanation. His kiss didn't ask for anything. But I gave anyway. I gave the breath I hadn't taken in months. The ache I hadn't let myself feel. The silence I'd been wearing like armor. I don't know how long we stayed like that, mouths barely moving, hearts doing all the talking. Time felt like a rumor. When he finally pulled back, he didn't look smug. Or proud. Or guilty. He just looked honest. Like this wasn't about stealing anything. It was about finding something that had been left behind in both of us. I touched his collarbone, not even thinking. My fingers barely grazed his skin where the button had come undone. He closed his eyes like that small touch said more than words ever could. And maybe it did. Because I didn't want him. I needed him. Just for that moment. Not forever. Not even tomorrow. Just this. Just now. We didn't speak. Because there's a kind of quiet that's too beautiful to ruin. But I saw it in his eyes. The same thing I was trying to hide in mine. We hadn't planned this. We hadn't expected it. But neither of us wanted to go back to who we were before it happened. We moved slowly, like every gesture might be the last, like we were writing a story on each other's skin, and afraid to run out of pages. His hands weren't rushed. They didn't grab or demand. They explored, like he was learning me, and I let him. Every time he touched me, something came back to life. Not in fireworks, but in quiet resurrections. Goosebumps. A shiver along my spine. That heat behind the knees you forget exists until someone reminds you. He kissed my shoulder just once and lingered there. Like the space between my collarbone and breath had been waiting for him all along. My fingers tangled in the fabric of his shirt. Half to pull him closer, half to keep myself from falling completely. He exhaled into my neck. Not a moan. Not a groan. Just a sound of disbelief. Like he hadn't expected this, and yet didn't want to leave it. There was no rush. No goal. Just skin and breath and the unraveling of years we didn't talk about. And in the middle of it all, he whispered something. Not a confession. Not a compliment. Just, you feel like home. And for a second I almost cried. Not because I was sad, but because I couldn't remember the last time I believed someone when they said something like that. Because for a few stolen seconds I wasn't anyone's widow. I wasn't someone left behind. I was just wanted, held, seen. And I didn't know if I wanted him to leave or stay long enough to break me open completely. Eventually we stood. Not because we wanted to, but because reality always finds a way back in. Even through the smallest cracks. He straightened his shirt. I tucked my hair behind my ear. Neither of us said what we were really thinking. Because what could you possibly say after undoing a part of yourself with someone who was never meant to be yours? I walked him to the door. The same door I'd opened too easily. The same threshold we'd both crossed without really meaning to. He paused there. Like he wasn't sure if stepping out meant stepping away. I didn't touch him this time, but I could still feel everywhere he had touched me. He looked down, then back up. That same slow gaze that had unraveled me hours ago. The book, he said, half smiling. I forgot it. I smiled too, but it didn't reach my eyes. You took the better story. His jaw clenched just slightly like he wanted to say more. But he didn't. And maybe that was mercy. Because if he had stayed 1 second longer, I don't think I could have let him leave. The door closed softly behind him. No slamming. No drama. Just quiet. But my fingers? They were still curled. Still remembering the outline of his hand in mine. Still holding on to a moment that would never come again. And I realized, he didn't just open a different chapter. He finished one I hadn't known I was still stuck in. And now, I was finally ready to begin another.